New polling out this week from Emerson College shows voters favor Democratic candidates for Congress over Republicans by a 10-point margin. And it's increasingly feeling like Democrats may have a chance to not just take back the House, but the Senate as well. A year ago, the idea of Democrats, this is what I was talking to Chris about, taking back the Senate, it was kind of a pipe dream. But look at this. I mean, a whole lot has happened over the last year. In Texas, a recent YouGov poll shows Democratic Senate candidate James Talarico polling 8 points ahead of his potential opponent, Ken Paxton, 7 points ahead of his other potential opponent, John Cornyn. In Ohio, a state Trump won in all 3 of the last presidential elections by pretty good margins. A recent poll shows Democrat Sherrod Brown within the margin of error against Republican Senator John Husted. And in Deep Red, Alaska, another recent poll shows Democrat Mary Peltola a full 6 points ahead of Republican Senator Dan Sullivan. If the Senate map is anywhere near that competitive this November, Republicans are in serious trouble. And it's very clear that the grassroots energy in this election is on the Democratic side. Today, we got big news out of the state of Maine, where Maine Governor Janet Mills announced that she was dropping out of the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate. She essentially conceded early defeat to her primary opponent, Graham Plattner. An Oysterman who just a year ago had virtually no statewide name recognition, but who has galvanized Maine's electorate with a populist agenda focused on economic issues and taking on what he calls the billionaire economy. Now, viewers of this show will be familiar with Graham Plattner. He's joined us here on this show during the campaign. And since then, Plattner has caught fire in Maine, leading in poll after poll against both his Democratic opponents and Susan Collins. He's built strong support across the state, despite a series of resurfaced controversies from his past, many of which I asked him about when they first came to light, including a tattoo he got during his time in the armed services with Nazi connotations, which he only recently covered up, and a series of old offensive Reddit posts, all of which he's since apologized for. He's also weathered some more recent controversies, including a recent appearance on the podcast of an anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist. But none of it was a secret. The Democratic voters of Maine knew about it all. People came in droves to his rallies, to his events. And today, Graham Plattner is focusing on the support he's earned from the people of Maine as he effectively declares victory against his biggest primary opponent.
We got some big news today. I want to thank everybody else. Everyone who's volunteered, everyone who's donated, the artists who have made art for this, the musicians who have written songs, the teacher that has donated $20, the fisherman who's had conversations down at the boat launch, the nurse who has gone out and knocked on doors. The win we get today, it comes because of you. It comes because of the work that you've done, that you've put into this. It comes from the fact that you guys believe in this kind of politics. And that we're going to pull this thing off. And we're going to make this happen. And we're going to show the rest of the country that this is the politics of the future, and that working people can organize and they can win.
Joining me now for his first national interview since becoming the likely Democratic nominee for Maine Senate is Graham Plattner. I just have to say, I mean, just a few months ago, just to put in just terms here, and I was just talking with Chris about this, you were essentially unknown to the public. I mean, I'm sure you knew your neighbors, you knew your friends, but not across the state of Maine. Since then, you've built a huge base of support, while weathering controversy after controversy. And today, Maine's establishment-backed popular two-term governor Janet Mills conceded defeat to you in Maine's Democratic Senate primary, a primary that's not happening tomorrow. How did we get here?
I mean, honestly, I think that the people of Maine have just recognized that we need to do politics fundamentally differently. And our pitch is that politics is something that's supposed to be accessible to working folks. It's supposed to be representative of working people, and it's supposed to show up and have policies that are going to improve their lives materially. And to do that, we need to get people organized. We need to get people engaged. And that's really been the whole focus of this campaign. I mean, in many ways, this is an organizing project first. And that's what we've put our energy into. That's the message. That's how we've engaged with people. I mean, I go all over the state, and we've held 63 town halls at this point. I do 3 to 6 public events a day. I talk to every Mainer I can come across, and I'm accessible. People can ask me questions about anything, and I'm happy to answer them. And it's that kind of politics that I think a lot of people in Maine and a lot of people across this country have in many ways been waiting for. I know I certainly have, which is why that's why we're running it this way.
The general election essentially starts today, starts tomorrow. Maybe you gave yourself a moment today. The primary, even though the primary is still, of course, happening in June, you're running against an incumbent that no one has been able to unseat for decades. A lot of people have tried. Republicans are ready to absolutely pummel you with attack ads on many of the same topics we've discussed before, you've been answering to in your state. What's your plan here to confront that, to address it, to defeat it?
Well, there's no question that the Republican Party knows that Susan Collins is weaker than she's ever been. They know that this is the kind of politics that's going to win. And that's also why they've already committed $42 million to ads against us in this race. Just this week, there was a $2 million ad buy from a Republican super PAC that had been contributed to by 12 billionaires, including the CEO of Palantir and Blackstone, and ironically, a private equity group that had shuttered some of the mills here in Maine, in Jay and Bucksport. They're coming after us with money, which is why we need money. I'll be entirely honest. If folks are watching at home, we need donations so we can fight back and, frankly, win this thing. So if you have the ability, please go to grantforsenate.com and contribute, sign up to volunteer. We're going to beat Susan Collins in November. There's no question about it. But to do it, we're going to need all the help we can get. And any road to a Democratic Senate goes through the state of Maine. And we know the Republican Party's coming for us. We've known it since the beginning, and we're going to continue in many ways just doing what we're doing. Because as we build this thing, as we continue to go around Maine, as we continue to mobilize the people of Maine and organize them and show them that politics is theirs, that's how we're going to get through all of it. At the end of the day, when you go out and talk to the people of Maine, answer their questions directly, when you're accessible to them as a human being, when they see negative TV ads, everybody knows what those look like. Everybody knows what they sound like. We've seen them. We've heard them. It's just not the kind of politics that Mainers really want anymore. They want something that's a lot more real, and that's exactly what we're doing.
As they pummel you, you're going to have to run in contrast to Susan Collins. What is your biggest argument against Susan Collins? Because you're going to have to run negative ads against her, and I'm sure there are going to be outside groups that do that. So what's going to be the biggest attack you have against her?
Well, one, I mean, Susan Collins has been in power for 30 years. And in those 30 years, life has gotten harder for working Mainers. We have watched hospitals shutter. We have watched schools close. We have watched housing become unaffordable across this state. We're watching young people leave Maine because if they can find a house, they can never afford to buy it. The price of goods and services continue to go through the roof. I mean, you guys just had a segment about the price of gas. It's going up here, too. People are feeling it. And we're all feeling it as we look at a political system that has for a long time been representing the interests of those that donate the most money to establishment candidates. And you really can't find a better example of an establishment candidate that has used their position to improve their lot in life, often to the detriment of their constituents, than Susan Collins. You know, Susan Collins, she does not use her power that she often likes to brag about, being the chair of appropriations. That didn't slow down the fact that the Republicans passed the big, beautiful bill last spring. That cut Medicaid and Medicare funding here in the state of Maine just so they could justify tax cuts for corporations. She also has historically been very supportive of sending America into more stupid foreign wars. And this war in Iran, which nobody thinks is a good idea, she failed in 5 votes, 5 war powers resolutions to actually show up for the American people and end this thing, and only just recently has changed her tune. The people of Maine want someone who's consistent They want someone who clearly has politics, clearly believes in what they're doing. Susan Collins moves back and forth depending on what she and her advisors think are the best ways that she can try to trick all of us into thinking she's a moderate. And in the age of Donald Trump, when you always show up to vote for Trump when it counts and are never there when we need you to show up for the American people, the people of Maine are sick and tired of that.
You mentioned that she only recently changed her tune. She tweeted today that she was going to consider or be open to supporting the War Powers Resolution. She's voted against that several times in the past. How central, I mean, you yourself are a veteran, you served. How central to this race is your opposition to the war, the contrast with her? And do you think she's trying to close that? And if so, what are you going to do about it?
I mean, to me, this is not like a political matter per se. This is a personal matter. Susan Collins, and frankly, many other people like her, sent me to fight in Iraq. It was a deeply stupid war that, looking back on, I think we can all agree was a waste of everyone's time. I had to take part in an immense amount of violence because establishment politicians like her do not care about the actual cost of war. They simply see war as a game. They see it as something that they get to do to make themselves feel tough. We need to end that kind of politics. We need to end that kind of relationship with war in our political system. She is, I think, very much trying to change her tune. But at this point, I mean, she's been consistent about this stuff for years. She's not going to. We're going to keep pointing out that every chance that she's had, she has not actually showed up to try to rein in a rogue executive as it starts illegal foreign wars that the American people have to bear the brunt of, whether it's by sending our sons and daughters off to fight and die or because it's destroying the economy. And we are now watching the price of everything go through the roof. That's hers. She owns that. She and the establishment politicians and the Republican Party that have kept this stuff going, that have not been able to rein in the Trump administration, that is their responsibility. This is the world that they have built. And at this point, any attempt for her to change messaging on it, it's going to fall flat because her actual behavior just recently shows that this is not a thing she truly cares about.